We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order.
New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
And we are live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10. This is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It's the 25th of January, 2020, as we're dodging another pandemic that's threatening to sweep the world, ladies and gentlemen. You know, how many times are we going to keep going through the same thing over and over again before we finally learn? You know, the alarmist media keeps trying to spread fear. And what agenda is behind this one? You know, we've already been through SARS, we've been through the bird flu, we've been through swine flu, we've been through multiple pandemics anyway, and we know they spent 9 years recreating the 1918 Spanish flu virus that killed so many people back then. What kind of agenda are they pushing this time? That's my question. I mean, I'm not saying that people aren't really sick and some people haven't really died. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying hyping these situations, anytime you see massive hype in the controlled media, you got to ask yourself the question, what is really behind it? And I have a hunch that there is going to be some funding that's going to be proposed at some point to build somebody's health infrastructure in some part of the world, probably China. And who knows?
Yeah,
maybe this could
and isn't it amazing that at the same time that 5G is making an appearance here in the U.S., they need 5G for the healthcare system.
Yeah, I think we need 5G like we need a hole in the head. I don't know, maybe 5G will cause the hole in the head.
That's true. Fry those critters that are walking around on two legs.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
that'll solve the whole problem.
John Rappaport has a good article out. In fact, I put it up on the website. Man who pushed SARS dud, now pushing new Chinese virus. He says,
that's interesting.
He says, first, a few updates. Things are moving fast. The Chinese government has locked down Wuhan, that's the supposed epicenter of this thing, a city of 11 million people, owing to the threat of the coronavirus. There are also travel restrictions in several other Chinese cities. So what does this all prove? Answer, nothing. It proves the Chinese government wants to install tighter controls. It doesn't lead to the conclusion that a coronavirus is making people sick or killing them. During the so-called Zika virus, there's another one that was going to get us. Remember all the small baby heads?
Yeah, Zika.
Everybody's kid was going to have a small head, supposedly. The Zika virus crisis of 2016, women in several countries were told not to get pregnant because the virus might cause brain damage in their babies. That was a form of lockdown, too. If it were instituted for good reason, we would now be seeing massive numbers of babies all over the world born with microcephaly, that's the smaller head and brain damage, as the virus spreads. We aren't seeing that. He says, I covered Zika extensively, and he did a fantastic job on that, by the way. This is a guy, by the way, that used to do reports for like CBS Health Watch and things like that. I'm sure he's not invited on anymore, though. The measures, he says, the measures government authorities enact do not constitute proof of a harmful virus. Otherwise, presidents and kings could write science all day by simply issuing orders. We are now seeing photos of people lying in the street in Wuhan and perhaps other Chinese cities, so-called victims of the coronavirus. What does this prove? Answer, nothing. So far, I've seen pictures of 4 or 5 people lying in the street or on a hospital floor in a city of 11 million people. If this all by itself were proof that a new coronavirus is a killer, then Los Angeles and New York with their homeless street populations would have no people left. The text of a patent for a coronavirus is circulating wide and far on the web. What does this prove? Answer, nothing. Patents for many viruses are obtained all the time. More specifically, these patents discuss ways of weakening viruses or extracting material from them for the purpose of developing vaccines. I've read excerpts from 2 different coronavirus patents one in the U.S. and one in the U.K. They both refer to vaccine development. They aren't, as some people assume, slam dunk evidence that researchers are cooking up a virus in a lab or weaponizing it. Well, here is a comforting development. The Chinese researcher Zhong Nanshan, who quote, discovered the SARS virus, unquote, in 2003, is now at the forefront of pronouncements about the new coronavirus that is shaking up China and other parts of the world. His mere presence on the scene is a warning sign. Take a grain of salt. Try a pound. Zhong Nanshan's 2003 SARS quote-unquote pandemic was a dud. A WHO, World Health Organization advisory against traveling to infected, quote-unquote, infected Toronto cost merchants in the city several $1 billion. Meanwhile, a Canadian WHO biologist, Frank Plummer, told Plumer, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, told the press he was shocked by the fact that fewer and fewer SARS patients had the virus in their bodies. Actually, fewer and fewer, he said, was approaching 0. Hoax. The purported cause of the disease wasn't there. People had ordinary flu symptoms, and this is the thing, Vicky. I was reading about this last night, and the more I read about it, it sounded exactly like West Nile virus. You remember that scare? I don't know if you had that in Idaho, but we had it. We had all the time here. The local media reports were, West Nile, and they always showed these dead mosquitoes, like that's somehow, going to be more compelling. I would think it'd be more compelling to show dead people, than dead mosquitoes. But anyway, they were always talking about the West Nile virus here, and how it was going to come and get you. And I read about it, and the worst case scenario. I mean, the people that died from it were people with compromised immune systems, young people, like little babies that hadn't had a chance to develop their immune system yet. People that would ordinarily die from an ordinary flu. If you had a compromised immune system, you're probably more likely to die from something like that. But as long as you keep your immune system up, you'll probably be okay. But and that's exactly, they've done this. They're doing the same thing with these types of things that they do with this climate scare. Climate change. If it floods somewhere, it's climate change. If it doesn't flood, it's climate change. If it snows too much, it's climate change. If it doesn't snow, it's climate change. Everything that any kind of extreme weather of it, it's climate change. And
well, any kind of anything, it's climate change, because they are trying to change the global financial system, the economic basis of the world economy.
It's like Dr. Tim Ball said, who is a climatologist. He's been on the show many times. He said everything that's normal, they latch upon like it's abnormal. And they're doing that here. If there's something that's normal, in the case of people dying from flus, This is just another, as I see it, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not saying anything medical, but as I see it, this is just another one of those types of situations where things have it's spreading. It's a virus that spreads. People get sick. Yes, some people will die, and it's a tragedy when people die. But putting it into proper perspective, it's not going to be something that's that dangerous. I don't believe. We've been through this many times before.
By this point, people should be recognizing the fact that we're not being told the truth, that there is an agenda behind all of this, and it has nothing to do with a virus like this coronavirus or West Nile virus or whatever. Those are they're dialectics.
Yes,
they're using them as dialectics.
And what is a dialectic? It's an argument, argument, and in this case, the argument is for change, some kind of agenda that they're pushing. And what are they pushing? Well, many times, Vicky, it has to do with funding. And I come back to the audio from former Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, his remarks at some global forum somewhere.
Whether we sit in defense ministries or health ministries, we all have a common interest in helping all nations, helping each other prevent and contain outbreaks. We must do this to support the development of healthcare systems and infrastructures that Secretary Burwell described a few minutes ago, building health security and capacity around the world.
There you go.
And that's it. And they're doing it with technology, just like the 5G is for. And the thing is that they have made healthcare so expensive in the United States because they are bleeding off money to build this global healthcare system. And so where senior citizens in this country should have Medicare, they're using insurance. That's the thing, because insurance is something that you pay money for, that whether or not you're going to get a return on your investment in insurance is you hope you don't get a return on it, because you're hoping that you don't get sick. But they can use it as a tool to raise money to then build infrastructure in other countries. And so there is a massive fraud. That's one of the things about Benghazi that never really was discussed anywhere, was that Chris Stevens was over there to meet with the emergency room doctor. And that had to do with systems that they were apparently going to try to install to bring Libya onto this global network.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't get discussed.
No, it doesn't. But I heard a report recently that there were 3, I don't know if they were Hezbollah or Quds Force people. I don't know who they were. But anyway, 3 other people that I've only heard that one report, and how many years after Benghazi was 2011. So here we are like 9 years later, and I hear the report a month ago.
Yeah.
So
the 3 people did what?
They were there to attend the meeting with Chris Stevens about the health care.
Okay. Yeah. So things are not as they seem. That's the bottom line. Often that is the case. And when they're putting forth this, he says, he says, here's the capper. The World Health Organization claims that every year there are between 3 and 5 million cases of ordinary run-of-the-mill flu in the world, resulting in 290,000 to 650,000 deaths. The symptoms are indistinguishable from SARS, but for some reason they don't declare ordinary flu an ongoing epidemic. No, they choose SARS, for which the cause is absent. He's just using SARS as an example because that was the last thing. But they choose SARS, for which the cause is absent, and they call that an epidemic. It caused 800 deaths. Now, you put 800 deaths versus 290,000 to 650,000 deaths. I mean, it's
to a population of 9 billion people in the world.
Well, that's what they tell us. Now, I don't believe the official population numbers.
7 billion, I don't care, 5 billion.
Yeah, 6 billion, 7.
You know,
I mean, yeah.
Pick your B. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
We're talking about a minuscule amount of people.
Yeah, well, yeah, and again, it's a tragedy anytime it happens to your family, or we're not minimizing the deaths here. The point is, though, is statistically, I mean, these people, a lot of them would probably have died from something else because they have compromised immune systems or elderly or, fill in the blank here. The point is that statistically, while it's not insignificant because it's a human life, statistically it's ridiculous to be focusing on this as a big giant epidemic.
Well, what that tells you is that the verbalized agenda is not the agenda. That's it. And you can talk about how many people die and, terrible diseases and all of that stuff, but the numbers just don't add up. And our world is it's a world of business. And in business, when you're looking at that kind of expenditures relative to the return on investment, and so that's it. That's not what it's about.
Well, here's how they lie to you. American Military News has a headline, up to 9,700 people infected with deadly Chinese coronavirus. Okay? Now, that sounds like a lot, right? Up to 9,000, now, but here's your first clue. Up to 9,700 people. Okay? So then they say public health experts at Imperial College London estimate that the number of deadly Wuhan coronavirus infections is much greater than the number given by officials. Now, where are they getting this estimate? They're just pulling it out of their hind end, I guess. Professor Neil Ferguson, who heads a team at the college which carries out disease modeling for the World Health Organization, said that there could be as many, Vicky. I suppose there could be 1 million. That doesn't mean there is.
Yeah. You know what? I am a big fan of actual statistics.
Yeah, I like facts.
Think about this. We have the most tremendous computing power throughout the world, the tremendous transfer of data, the collection of data, and they're using models. What does that tell you? They should be able to give us actual statistics. So if they're not giving actual statistics, I'm not interested in hearing it because I know it's BS.
Listen, once they get that global health, infrastructure that Secretary Hagel was talking about here a moment ago, then they'll probably be able to give you your actual statistics. But they won't though because
they got to build this technocratic. The models are used for the dialecting. I mean, the models are used to manipulate people, their perception.
Okay.
So the actual statistics, I'm sure, will be carefully guarded secrets.
Now, the journal Nature did a piece on this Chinese lab because, see, in this town, which is the epicenter, they have the facility there that works with dangerous pathogens. And some people are saying that this could very well have escaped the lab. This thing, I guess, was built in, let's see, when was it finished? Well, Nature says, inside the Chinese lab poised to study the world's most dangerous pathogens, Maximum Security Biolab is part of a plan to build a network of BSL-4 facilities across China. Now, this is
what a fabulous idea to have a level biological lab right in the middle of a populated city.
Well, sure, why not? Anyway, the BS4, I guess, is the highest level that so they're going to be working with the most dangerous things. Now, this lab has already been done. It finished, I think, I'm trying to remember what year it was. It's in here somewhere. But people are speculating that this lab, I'm looking for the spot in the article, but the people are speculating that this virus could have escaped this lab. What I think is interesting in this whole piece is it says the Wuhan lab cost 300 million yuan. That's 44 million US dollars. And to allay safety concerns, because most of the article is about, people were worried that, because some of these things have already gotten out. In China, there was a lab in Beijing, and they escaped, I guess SARS it was, that escaped the lab multiple times in Beijing. Now think about that. It escaped multiple times. They were able to live through it, though, weren't they? But anyhow, it says the lab cost 300 million yuan, that's $44 million, and to allay safety concerns, it was built far above the floodplain and with the capacity to withstand a magnitude 7 earthquake, although the area has no history of strong earthquakes. It will focus... Did we lose you?
I think you did lose me for a minute.
Well, that was weird.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the internet here has been being flaky again, so if I lose you, just let me know. Well, if I lose you, I may end up having to... Folks, if the streams go down, just hang with us, and I have what I think might be a backup plan that goes, but it'll take me a moment to switch things over.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you use the Chrome browser?
No.
Okay. I found out something interesting about the Chrome browser last week. There are times when it will have an interruption, like when I'm watching a C-SPAN video or something. Mm-hmm. Every few minutes it will stop and then continue on.
This is the
and I
underlying...
found if I switched browsers that it didn't happen.
Well, this has nothing to do with the browser. In fact, it's everything that's even outside of the browser, because there's a lot of stuff that we have here that doesn't go through a browser, and and Skype is one of them. Actually, it doesn't go through the browser; it's just its own standalone application. But I got halfway through your C-SPAN video last night of the Soviet dissidents, the ones that tried to escape the Soviet Union, and I was trying to clip audio from that, and boom, no internet. And
the defectors, you mean?
Yeah, the defectors.
Communist defectors?
Yeah, I said dissidents, but the defectors.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so anyway.
Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, you're fine. Continue. You're fine. The World Health Organization. This is what I wanted to talk about, because they talked about the cost of the lab, how it's built to withstand an earthquake, even though there's no earthquakes in that part of the area. It will focus. Now they're saying it will. Keep in mind, this is a 2017 article. It will focus on the control of emerging diseases, store purified viruses, and act as a World Health Organization reference laboratory linked to similar labs around the world, Vicky.
Uh-huh.
It will be a key node.
A big part of the reason for the Internet had to do with the medical research, the Human Genome Project, going back to 1980, 85 or 87, when the Department of Energy partnered with the National Institutes of Health to develop a research infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, I just think this is interesting that people are worried that this might have escaped the lab in Wuhan, and then all of a sudden we find out this Wuhan lab is connected as a key lab to the World Health Organization, and the World Health Organization, they like. Now, I suppose this is a conspiracy theory. I don't have any proof right now, but the World Health, they need funding for certain things, don't they? Now, wouldn't it be interesting if they come out now and then propose some kind of a thing to help mitigate these problems in the future? I'm suspicious. I'm sorry, but I don't buy all this pandemic stuff.
Well, I guess I've spent too much time looking at the healthcare system. I mean, that was the second system I looked at, and I kind of just accidentally stumbled into when I found that Senator John Glenn made a request of, I guess it was the GAO, to do a study on what would be the costs and benefits of a nationalized medical records system. Okay, so, and then from there, that's when I found the Human Genome Project and the Department of Energy and NIH collaborating to build the infrastructure for it, which the infrastructure was, of course, the internet for medical research.
Yeah, if they can control... I think I lost her again. If they can control healthcare, they can control people. And that's the bottom line. Well, I'm going to take a break, see if I can get Vicky back. Stay with us, folks. This is Government America.
What's really going on? This is Government America.
All right, we're back. This is Government America. I'm Darren Weeks. I think we have Vicky Davis back. Vicky.
Yes, I'm back. I guess we hit the jackpot on topics.
I don't know what's going on, but I know that we are streaming. We are now streaming over the Verizon network because I had to abandon the terrestrial stuff here. So I don't know what's. We'll see how this holds up. Hopefully, it doesn't rain too hard because I got kind of a weak signal. Hey, this is homegrown radio right here, ladies and gentlemen. But here's the thing, folks. Because we don't have massive resources and we don't have massive infrastructure here, you're getting the truth. You're getting the truth that you won't get anywhere else. Because other outlets that are more stable are less stable in terms of the information that you're given. So there you go. So yep. It's kind of a trade-off.
This is radio in the raw.
There you go, raw radio. I like that. And, so I think we covered the coronavirus pretty well. There's one other thing I wanted to say. It's related, and there is now a chickenpox outbreak in northern Mexico. So I guess they had a migrant shelter there, and the migrant shelter had to shut down. And I got a Reuters article on that, so I don't know what the consequences of that are going to be, but we're just surrounded by germs. I guess that's really...
Well, that chicken pox is not a disaster.
No.
I had chicken pox. Everybody I know had chicken pox.
Well, the other thing isn't a disaster either. That's.
It's really ugly, though, I have to say. Chicken pox are ugly.
Yeah, it doesn't make you feel good. But when I was growing up, we had a situation where people would actually have chicken pox parties. They would actually get together and, whole kids on the block, and they would just put them all in one room and get it over with. And now they talk about, it's just a disaster, and, you got to isolate yourself, and come on, people. Anyway, we have also information about 2 FBI wiretaps that were, now this is going to sound like something you've already heard, but I'm getting interference from the cell signal now. We're having a time today. I got to try to figure out a way to get this thing to where it's not.
Well, we have a lot of great subjects to talk about, so let's proceed on.
We're going to do this show if it's the last thing I do, and it may very well be. Anyway, the FBI. Now we know the Inspector General report on the FISA warrants that were obtained for Carter Page were at best not valid, shall we say, for lack of a better. In other words, they used false pretenses. They used false pretenses to get these FISA warrants, and we learned that, in part from the Inspector General report. But now they came out with new documents. Cheryl Atkinson, who used to work for CBS News until she started telling too much of the truth during the Obama administration, and basically they spiked her stories and she got frustrated and then decided to go out on her own. At least 2 of the FBI's Department of Justice approved wiretap applications have been deemed invalid. That means related government surveillance of ex-Trump campaign volunteer Carter Page was improper and possibly illegal. Well, and she's being diplomatic there. I would say they were illegal, but I'm not a law expert, so I guess I can't say that either. The problematic wiretap, but it seems to me like if you go to a court and you sign a warrant, they
perpetrated a fraud on the court.
Yes.
And they should go to jail for that.
I agree.
And they should go to jail for the illegal wiretap. They knew what they were doing.
The applications were signed by James Comey, Dana Borente, and Rod Rosenstein.
Mm-hmm.
The Justice Department said the FBI lacked probable cause to believe Carter Page was acting as a foreign agent. So this is a new document, brand new, just out. January 7th, 2020 is the stamp on it, and I have a copy of it, but it's on the uscourts.gov website, the FISA court website, fisc.uscourts.gov. Got the link there. It'll be in the show notes, and I also got a copy of it on our server in case they take it down. Proof, in my opinion, that criminal charges should be brought against James Comey. Now, that's my opinion based upon what I'm seeing here in this document. We already know he's being investigated by the Justice Department for leaking information that he wasn't supposed to leak. And in fact, if you recall, he admitted before Congress that he leaked information he wasn't supposed to leak. We played the audio on the show. What were you going to say?
I wrote an article about Carter Page and that decision, or I don't know about that decision, but I wrote an article about that in February of 2018. So they've known it absolutely for sure that that's what happened nearly 2 years ago. So what they keep doing, they just keep kicking the can down the road. Why haven't people been prosecuted? They have the evidence. They've known about it. Why aren't they prosecuting these people?
Yeah,
That's the real problem.
I don't have a whole lot of confidence in the Justice Department.
I don't think we have a Justice Department.
Yeah.
I don't think we have an American Justice Department. I don't think they're operating under American law. I don't know who they are, and I don't care if they put an American face in front of us like Bill Barr. They are not functioning like an American Department of Justice. So I don't know who they are. They're certainly not acting as a Justice Department.
Who they are is if Vicky Davis commits a fraud, they're going to send Vicky Davis to jail. That's who they are.
That's true. Yes, that's true.
If Darren Weeks commits a fraud, they're going to send Darren Weeks to jail. But if James Comey commits a fraud, that's fine. We're going to make excuses. We're going to keep impeachment going so that nobody thinks about it or talks about it.
Let him write a book and profit from the proceeds.
Yeah, and he'll make appearances on TV shows.
We have laws that you cannot profit from criminal activities. And that's what he did, basically, when he wrote a book about this whole thing. He was profiting on his criminal behavior.
Yeah. Yep, that's
and
right.
the mess he created out of our FBI.
Yeah, so anyway, turning a corner here, the political situation in our country has become so toxic. It's hard not to imagine that we're not headed for a civil war, Vicky. Because when you see things, in fact, it's gotten so bad. I look at some of these videos now, like just last night I was watching a C-SPAN video, and I look at the people in the video and I think, they're probably sane people. You could probably talk to those people in that room, and, I'm just talking about people in the background. They look like nice people. You could probably have a conversation with them, and even though you may not agree politically, it would probably be a civil conversation. And I think we've lost that because people have gone nuts. I mean, literally stone cold, crazy, lunatic, mad. I mean, people have absolutely gone bonkers to the point where, you can't have a public official now in any capacity, any public. If you're public at all, you're going to get death threats. If you're public at all, you're going to get hate mail. And we're not just talking about hate mail. We're talking about some of the most vile, filthy, disgusting, hideous stuff in the way of threats. And the case in point, there is this new Trump press secretary, Stephanie Grisham. Grisham is being inundated with sex hatred. And, she's never held a press conference. Now, that's probably because, Jim Acosta of CNN was making such a fuss at these, at the press, when they were having press conferences. And so the administration's answer is we just won't have press conferences anymore. If you're going to take over the press conference, and then, of course, they got the court to decide with CNN, so that he could basically just continue disrupting things. So they just said, well, we just won't have press conferences then. And so since that time, Trump has been holding impromptu press conferences when he's ready to get on a helicopter, and the press secretary has been doing other things. Mm-hmm. But this Stephanie Grisham, even though she's not really that overtly public, there are people that are still sending her hate mail. Things like F you and calling her what a see you next Tuesday is, right?
Right, yeah.
You effing see you next Tuesday.
And where is the FBI in all of this? Now, those are the people that the FBI should be tracking down, but they are leftists. I'll bet anything that they are leftists.
Well, sure they are.
I heard an FBI, he's the director of national security, that part of the FBI, and he was saying that all of the hate and all of the violence is coming from the right, and he was in this meeting talking about what the rally in Virginia before it happened, and they were expecting all kinds of violence, and he talked about these three guys, the base, and he said the people on the left, when he was asked a question about that, why are you focused on the right and not the left, he said the people on the left, like Antifa, they're just involved in minor petty stuff, a disruption of an event, but they're really not violent. Now, how is that for a world flipped upside down?
Well, I think somebody's political opinion's getting in the way, to be honest with you. To be honest with you,
I think that is government policy, because under globalization, the people on the right are pro-America, USA. People on the left want open borders. They are the globalist side.
I don't frame it all as a left versus right issue, though, Vicky, because to be honest with you, there's plenty of globalists on the right, supposedly right.
That's true, but they keep very quiet.
I don't know. I see an awful lot of them in these think tanks. And they're not keeping quiet.
Yeah, but they're not inside the government at the moment.
See, the problem I have with the left versus right dialectic is that it's exactly what they want us to do.
Dialectic. Think of it as philosophy. There is the philosophy of globalization, where we should have open borders. It's a free world. Everybody can go wherever they want, do whatever they want. That perverts can dress up for children. I mean, it's just a world free.
Well, that's an attack on the family unit.
The philosophy that says you need kind of an ordered society for people to thrive.
Yeah, well, and those attacks, and those are from leftists, but at the same time, this is, I think a lot of that has its roots in cultural Marxism and trying to deconstruct society so that they can rebuild. I mean, the strength, and I think that's part of the problem. I think that's the biggest problem that we have really is a breakdown in morality in our country. Because people, you wouldn't attack somebody publicly or privately for that matter. You wouldn't attack somebody with a baseball bat because they disagree, because they wear a particular hat. Okay, let's just take the MAGA hats, for instance. For somebody going out in public and wearing a hat that says, "Make America Great Again." Now, regardless of political affiliations, the hat itself doesn't even say, "I'm affiliated with Trump." It doesn't say that I voted for Trump. It says, "Make America Great Again." Why wouldn't every American want America to be great again? That doesn't seem like something you should attack somebody for. But that's
one-worldism.
That's how insane things have gotten. Is that somebody, because they're wearing a particular hat, gets clobbered upside the head with a baseball bat or something.
By one of those peaceful Antifa people.
Yeah, nonviolent. But I mean, this is the kind of stuff, I'm looking at a picture right now of a teddy bear that was all cut up and there looks like blood on it. And this is something that one of these sick individuals sent to this press secretary. And, are they going to have to institute Secret Service protection for her? I don't know.
They should, because
they
that
may already
is
have.
Terrorism. That is the very definition of terrorism. It
truly is. Yeah, it's they defined it in the law, United States Code, as any. In fact, it's defined very broadly, to be honest with you. I would say that even so much as threatening not to vote for somebody again in an election would fall under this definition of terrorism, the way I read the wording. Any threat, any attempt by using threats to coerce, or try to shape public opinion. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it before me right now, but it's written very broadly. But that certainly something like that would definitely fall under the category of terrorism. And, I assume that the Secret Service or somebody at the federal level is attempting to track down many of these people. And in fact, they probably are. But when you're being inundated, how can you possibly track down all of them? They probably don't have the staff. I can't imagine what it's like to be a Secret Service agent today.
Well, that FBI guy involved in national security said in that meeting that they have 4,000 people involved with the JTTF, the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, and then they have the FBI. So the JTTF is separate from the FBI. So they have plenty of people involved. But they just don't go after them, I don't believe. Yeah. Because I think at the institutional level, within our government, I think that they are globalists. And that's why Trump is having so much trouble. Yeah, he's not supported at the institutional level of our government, where decisions are actually implemented and made, and where the real wheels of government exist.
Earlier, now, did you want to talk about the Lindsay Graham audio? Where?
Yeah.
Let me just go ahead and play that. You want to set this piece up?
Well, it was a press conference, and he was talking about the Democrats and their presentation, and then he made the most interesting statement about the money that is going to the Ukraine. And everybody should listen to this really carefully.
And when they tell us that we betrayed the Ukraine because we froze the aid for a certain amount of days, future aid, and that Donald Trump basically betrayed the Ukraine and put all the Ukrainian soldiers at risk, I don't buy that, because I've been there. And I've seen the difference of the Trump administration versus the last administration. And they said this was vitally important. It's 10% of the Ukrainian budget, military budget. What they don't get, that Donald Trump doesn't like the fact that the United States is not only having to increase spending now, but we're taking 10% of the Ukrainian budget and giving it to the American taxpayer. They don't get that President Trump would like France and Germany and other people to do more. They have foreign policy differences with this president. They don't get where he's coming from. And I find myself on the other side siding with them a lot against the president, but I do respect the fact that he believes that somebody should not accept as a status quo that we're going to give the Ukrainian military 10% of their budget in perpetuity. If you don't understand that, you don't understand Trump's motives.
It's another gift for the military-industrial complex. We're taking 10% of Ukraine's budget and giving it back, giving them 10% of, well, I assume giving them weaponry.
10% of their military budget.
Yes, and consequently, what are they getting for that? In return, they're getting armaments, aren't they?
Regardless of whatever they're getting for it, he said that this was an arrangement that was set up in perpetuity.
Yeah.
So why are we taking 10% of Ukraine's budget and then giving Ukraine back 10% of their military budget? That makes no sense at all, except if you take it out of the context of U.S. foreign policy and put it in the context of global policy as a global system of financial management for the world. That's the only context in which you can come up with a coherent reason and argument for doing that.
Well,
so why are we doing that? And I have reason for saying that because back in about 2005, there was a hearing of the Congressional Budget Office, and they were talking about similar things that don't really make sense. They were talking about changing the U.S. tax system away from being an income tax-based system. In order to pay into the tax system, you have to have a Social Security number. It's a national system of taxation. What they were talking about under the name of the fair tax, they were talking about changing that. But where you get the sour note was that they were talking about our states and localities would have to pay sales tax. Everybody across the whole country would have to pay sales tax on every dollar spent, including our cities, our states, and counties, every dollar spent. Not only that, but the federal government itself would have to pay sales tax. Now, that doesn't make logical sense. If you're talking about a national tax system, the government having to pay...
Well, it makes sense if you consider that the money is going to be siphoned off.
Well, that's
where's
the
money going? Because it's not.
That it only makes sense if you take it out of the national context.
Yes.
And you bring it up into the global context.
That's right. It's a world tax.
That's right.
And the sales tax will be a world tax, and that's what they're trying to. They're still trying to do that, Vicky. It's called a climate tax.
Well, yes, because it takes decades. It takes years and years and decades to implement systems as big as what we're talking about.
That's what these little nitwits who go around carrying signs all the time talking about climate change. You know, Greta Thunberg gets up there and says, "You're not doing enough. You're not doing anything. You're jeopardizing my future." What they're all pushing for is a global tax. That's what the end result is going to be if these clowns get their way.
Right. Well, did you look at that green-swan stuff? The BIS
yes, I did.
Produced a report talking about the green-swan.
Yeah, I did. I'm blanking exactly as to what all they said.
Well, what their report said was that the BIS is warning about global climate change, but they are also saying that they cannot solve it.
Yeah, they said something about a green swan events.
Well, and if you think about what they're trying to do, I've said many, many times, they are trying to change the economic basis for the world's economic system. Rather than it being commodity-based, they are trying to make it green accounting. We have green accounting, right, where they're charging the social cost. They're a video that I heard this morning said there mentioned financial capital and natural capital.
That's interesting.
Natural capital as opposed to natural capital.
Interesting. Well, I'll tell you what, we got the top of the hour break. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way, and we'll continue in hour number 2. And hopefully things will stabilize a little bit here. Stay with us, folks. Government America continues here in hour number 2. Don't go away.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order. New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
All right, live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is Govern America, hour number 2, starting a little late this time because we had some technical problems at the end of hour 1. It is the 25th of January, 2020, and hopefully everybody can hear us live, and if not, I don't know what to tell you. Do I still have you, Vicky? You still there, Vicky?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, very good. All right, we're back. For how long, who knows? But ended up having to reboot a computer, so that's going to be Interesting. Once in a while, little snafu. Looks like we have really a cocktail of snafus today. Cocktail of different technical problems. So,
we're talking about some really interesting topics, and so.
Is it a full moon?
Here.
I'm wondering.
I don't know. I think it's a full slate of really important things that are going on that some people might not want us to talk about.
There's an interesting article in Foreign Affairs. I went to Foreign Affairs because I get their emails. I don't subscribe anymore, but they do have some things that you can read for free. And I find it interesting if you go to the website, foreignaffairs.com, they have a lot of different moaning and whining and complaining about how Trump is screwing everything up foreign policy-wise. And to a certain degree, I would agree with them.
And I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's for the most part. Yeah, I would say so. Except for the Soleimani assassination, which I think is very, very damaging to the U.S. representation. Nobody's ever going to trust the United States again. When you consider that guy was lured into that situation, he was lured to Baghdad by Trump for a peace deal that they were going to forge between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It was under the pretense of that peace deal that he went there, and then he was assassinated.
Well, how is that different from how the U.S. government treats our own citizens? I don't trust the government either.
Well, I don't think they drone us from the air. Not yet, anyway. Now, that's probably coming someday.
Back up. Lavoy Finicum.
Well, that's true. That wasn't from the air, but that definitely, you're right. That was an ambush.
It was.
That was a complete ambush, and yeah, they murdered that man, and it was completely unnecessary. He didn't pose a threat to anybody. In fact, they were all wandering around in different public meetings. They could have arrested them at any time they wanted to.
That's right.
But they chose to do it that way. Well, it's the same thing with the Branch Davidians. You remember Waco in '93 with the Branch Davidians?
Yeah. I mean, Ruby Ridge.
Ruby Ridge, right? For
and
which
the
the government.
Ranch.
Yeah, it's just over and over again. You're right. You proved your point. Mm-hmm. And so, what are we to say about this? Anybody around the world, why would they trust the United States? Why would you trust these characters?
Yeah.
When they say they
Henry David Thoreau did a great quote about something about a wild and bloodthirsty tiger without a brain let loose on the world or something. And that's kind of what we are. I mean, our country is was, I don't know if it still is, a superpower, but it's functioning in a schizophrenic way.
I think it's a superpower, but it's a waning influence. And that's
because of the schizophrenia.
Because of the schizophrenia, because of the absolute the word mafia comes to mind. Irwin Schiff wrote that book, The Federal Mafia, about the tax collection, the IRS and everything. But really, you could apply this to the whole of government.
Well, okay, now let's stop there for a second. Let me go back to what I was talking about with the green-swan.
Okay.
And the I said BIS, but that is the Bank of International Settlements. Mm-hmm. And how they are trying to change the global economy. And I mentioned financial capital as opposed to natural capital. And their natural capital, of course, would be commodities. You build something, you chop down trees and you sell timber. That's natural capital. Financial capital is just currency manipulation. And in the 1990s, remember, they unmoored the Wall Street from a system that financed brick and mortar business. They allowed the financialization of Wall Street. Okay, and so now at this point in time with this BIS report talking about the green swan and how they can't They can't solve the problems of the world in this conversion. There is a group of banks. It's called the Network of Central Banks and Supervisors for Greening the Financial System. And they are the ones that have been trying to finance to a carbonless society, to a 21st century world where everything is delivered via the internet. It's a virtual world as opposed to a physical world of brick and mortar business.
Yeah, let me play you. I got the audio from Steve Forbes. That seems to go along with what you're saying. Did you want?
I hate that guy. Go ahead.
Well, we don't have to play it.
No, go ahead.
He spoke a couple of weeks ago, as you know, at the Detroit Economic Club, and he was talking a lot about positives on the economy, and he turned to tariffs.
Now, the big overhang, though, has been trade, and I'll make it clear, since I'm not running for anything, I'm no fan of tariffs. Tariff is another word for sales tax. It's a sales tax on American consumers and American businesses. Now, I believe that in terms of dealing with the trade abuses from China and from some others, I think there are more laser-like approaches you can take, going after specific individuals, specific companies that violate things. We've never consistently enforced our trade rules in the past. We can do so now. The great arbiter of trade disputes is what they call the WTO, the World Trade Organization. We win 85% of the cases we bring there. If it needs to be modernized, and it does in the digital age, the last modernization was in the 1990s, certainly due for one now that can take care of those who abuse the system, have found loopholes in the system. But that's what we should be focusing on. And I think you do that, you'll get just as much result in terms of dealing with those abuses than putting on tariffs, taxes on each other. Now, China's more hurt by tariffs than we are. Thanks to deregulation and the tax cut of 2017, the tariff wars have not been too harmful to the economy, but they have taken a toll. Instead of growing at 3%, we're growing a little above 2%. Why? Because investment. If you don't know what the rules of the road are, you're less likely to make long-term investments. You've got to know what the parameters are. Now, thankfully, the tax cut of 2017, which allowed instant expensing of investments, has helped ameliorate the uncertainty, but has certainly taken a toll. Looks like CapEx, as they call it, capital expenditures, is now beginning to rise again. Hopefully that'll take place. In a couple of days, we'll get Phase 1 formal signing of a deal with China. The USMCA, U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, hopefully will pass the Senate after this impeachment trial. I was hoping they could get it done before the impeachment trial, but in a few weeks that will finally get passed.
And it did get passed.
Hopefully we'll avoid a trade war with Europe. There's already talk about putting on 25% tariffs on auto parts and auto imports. The industry is very much against that. People don't fully realize how integrated the supply systems are in manufacturing today. And the abuses, as I say, we can take care of by taking a laser-like approach at the actual abusers. And in terms of China, in terms of their misbehavior, you go after those who do things wrong, you will get a response. By whether it's sanctions, you take a bank that is behaving in a rogue way, you kick them out of what they call the SWIFT system, where they can't do international payments anymore. That's the death knell. So there are tools in our kit that can be used to deal with specific abuses.
Okay, so I find it interesting with regard to all of these talks about tariffs and how bad they are for the economy. You know, a lot of the libertarians are against tariffs too because they look at it as a government meddling in the free market. The truth of the matter is, tariffs have been used by the founding fathers in order to, well, for one thing, fund the government. But it's interesting that these libertarians that are criticizing tariffs all the time are in the same camp of the globalists who hate tariffs.
Right, they are globalists. It's just that most of them don't realize it.
Yeah, they don't realize it. I agree.
Yeah,
so isn't that interesting?
Steve Forbes is a guy Maybe he was a good CEO of a business, but in terms of public policy for our country, he should just shut the hell up, because he doesn't know what he's talking about in terms of what's good for the country. He speaks from a position of what's good for Steve Forbes.
Well, sure. Yeah, but the problem is that the world government is being run by billionaires.
I know. Yes, that's right.
And that's why all of this benevolence that they're preaching doesn't wash, because if, they lay out the problems and they're so blind by their own ideologies that they don't realize that the problems were the ones that they caused. They caused these problems, and take income disparity. They cannot
look at the world from the point of view of the average person, and there are more average people out there than there are billionaires. But under this global system of financialization, conversion of the economy, they came up with this idea that we can have these billionaires be the leaders for policy and the implementation of policy. And that's why states are failing, nation states are failing all over the world, because these billionaires, the Davos people, they can run businesses and they can do a great job of that, but they can't run countries and policies and convert systems for regular people, because it always works out to their benefit. Funny thing about that.
Yeah, and what's funny about this is that they don't like what is being done in the way of foreign and domestic policy by the current administration. It's obvious to me that Trump has got a lot of flaws. I am very, very upset with him right now for this warmongering that he's been doing. But it's very apparent that the globalists don't like what he's doing either. And so it's interesting to me
his incompetence at foreign policy is blowing the whole narrative.
I think in some ways he's been gaslit too. Hey, let's take the bottom of the hour break. We'll be back in a moment, folks. Stay with us.
Where the spooks go to find out what's really going on. This is Govern America.
All right, we're back. This is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It's governamerica.com is the website. Governamerica.com is the website for the show. Check it out there. You can get past broadcasts there. You can subscribe to the podcast. We are on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn, a whole lot of different other avenues where you can get the broadcasts in the past. And, of course, there's only one place, though. Well, that's not even true. I was going to say there's only one place you can listen live, but that's not even true either. There are other places you can do that as well. But governamerica.com/listen is where you get our audio streams. And hey, if you're listening on a delayed situation, you missed all the fun, because all that stuff will be taken right out, and you'll just have one nice little package. By the way, let me go ahead and have you give your information out, Vicky.
Okay. My website is thetechnocratictyranny.com, and my email address is on the website. And my old website is channelingreality.com.
All right. And all of a sudden, you're sounding very garbled. Am I sounding okay to you? Hello? Well, this is just not going very well today. We're back down again. I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. This is, Yeah. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we're back.
Are we back on the air?
Yeah, I think so. I got, it looks like the stream is up. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be fun dealing with this archive afterwards. So, people are still hanging with us after all that. That's amazing.
Yeah, really.
So where were we? We were talking about your love for Steve Forbes.
Oh, Steve Forbes. Yeah. I don't know. It's difficult for me to be civil. I remember a few years ago he was talking about his ideas for healthcare, and he looks at healthcare, hospitals and tests and stuff, as if everything is elective, and and hospitals should be more like a 5-star hotel. And the hospital gowns, like he said, the hospital gowns should be more enticing. They don't need to be cotton.
Oh, you're talking about the healthcare. Yeah, let me go ahead and play.
They can be silk and.
I got the clip here. Hold on.
Let's start with healthcare. What kind of healthcare system do we want? But this then gets, though, to a very basic question. Why do we have a healthcare crisis? The short answer is, well, people like me are getting older. We want more health care services. And so, therefore, prices go up. You have an affordability, availability problem. But then step back and ask yourself a very basic question. Why is demand for health care considered a problem, a crisis, whereas demand for anything else in this economy is considered a great opportunity? People want more cars and trucks. A few people in this town and elsewhere will be glad to help you out. The basic reason then is nobody designed this system. It evolved for a variety of reasons. But the system doesn't have real free markets. It's basically still all third party. It's not patient-doctor. It's third party, whether it's insurance companies, where most people get their health coverage, Medicare, Medicaid on the government side, perhaps some large employers, but it's all third party. A hospital knows that its revenues depend on how well it negotiates with insurance companies for reimbursements or how they deal with Medicare, Medicaid, not with how they satisfy the patients. And part of the problem, too, when you have third party, you try to do everything top down instead of organically coming from people's needs and wants in the marketplace. Take, for example, electronic records. 25 years ago, every gas station in the country had electronic records. Every retailer had electronic records. You had to do it or you wouldn't survive. Didn't happen in healthcare. Why? Because there's no competitive advantage to doing it. Finally, somebody says, let's have electronic records. How good they would be. Not have to read Doc's handwriting anymore. Yay. And so they impose it from the top and created a lot of problems. But what has happened is people are now paying more out of pocket. Even though official medical inflation is not very high, people are paying more than they ever did before, or at least getting charged for it and hoping they have something in their HSA that can cover it. So they're becoming aware of what this stuff is beginning to cost, and that's beginning to create a market. You're already starting to see the rise of services, sort of medical versions of Priceline and Expedia. And so if you want to look at the future, look at the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. It's an institution in Oklahoma started by a couple of anesthesiologists several years ago, and their big thing was they don't take insurance. No Medicaid, no Medicare. Private insurance, by law, they have to take some of it if you insist, but they urge you not to. They post all their prices online. So if you want knee surgery, they give you all the things so you don't get bills 3 years later. They have a fixed price, and if it goes above that price, they eat the cost. So as a result, they are a very lean-run organization. They're board-certified surgeons, so it's not a quality issue. But even the state of Oklahoma sometimes sends their employees there. Why? Because even though the state won't get reimbursed because it's not insured, they end up saving money because the cost is so much less. Take, for example, a sophisticated kind of sinus operation. They do at the surgery center at a normal hospital in the region. It costs $17,000. There it's about $5,000. Same result. So that's the kind of thing you're going to see in the future.
Okay. It seems to me like everything that this is just more privatization that he's proposing. Now, there's some things that I would actually agree with him on to a certain extent. And part of that is it makes sense to me to try to get the insurance companies out of the equation. It seems to me like the reason why you have such high prices in healthcare today is because people are removed from the cost and institutions can charge almost whatever they want because people aren't going to balk at the cost of the procedure. And that's what I think he's getting at there. So certain doctors' offices and certain, medical personnel, people that are running medical facilities, by putting a menu up there for things that you know if you're going to have a procedure, to know what the cost is up front and to be able to pay for that would remove the insurance company out of the equation and would force costs down. Although there are certain things that you're not going to know you need, and so, I mean, certainly that would require self-diagnosis, and most people are not equipped with that. Here we go again. I don't know if we're going to be able to do the show today. There we go. We're back to where we were in 2018 when we were having all these problems with the internet coming and going. The problem back then was an issue with the... I had complained because the speed was slow here. They came out and brought a box out here and replaced it with a defective box. It was a router, the modem. And it was defective, and it would come and go and come and go and come and go. And that was the problem we were having back in 2018, which also ultimately precipitated in us discontinuing the show for a while, because we literally couldn't keep the show on the air. And then we ended up for a little more than a year, being off the air, and we came back in 2019. Things have been solid because they brought out a new modem and fixed the problem for a long time. And we had solid internet here for a long time. Now we started back up again, and for a while we were doing good. I don't know what the deal is today, but this week it's been bad. And I don't know why. All of a sudden it just seems like it's just gone the same way it was doing in 2018. So I don't know. I'm hoping we can get this fixed. I'm certainly going to be on the phone with them, complaining at them this week. But, one of the issues, we had a computer that we had to reboot. And that, I can handle one technical problem here or there. But when the underlying infrastructure that carries the show is not stable, and I'm talking about the internet, everything rides on the internet. If you don't have connectivity, you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll try to continue on. What I was saying before we lost it, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to ask you to finish saying what you're saying.
Well,
because I could spend 2 hours or more ripping apart everything that Steve Forbes said about the healthcare business. It's not a business in the normal sense.
Yeah.
Because what the healthcare system has is the power of life and death, which is monopoly power. It's essentially monopoly power over whether you're going to live or not.
And the question is not... See, the problem is that what Steve Forbes is pushing is privatization. What Steve Forbes is pushing is corporatization.
Well, we have privatization of healthcare, but what they've done with healthcare policy is they have split apart hospitals and they destroyed the economics of the healthcare system. The whole reason we have health insurance to begin with, it was started by doctors. And why? Because people couldn't afford to pay for healthcare.
Right.
Okay,
right.
So that's why we have a health insurance system, but the Congress destroyed it. All the policies that they've made for healthcare since the late 1970s has been to destroy the system, to make it a profit-based system. And even though they say hospitals are nonprofit, that is BS. What they do with the money is they expand, and they're expanding like a parasite.
Yeah. Well, as I see it, some of the stuff he was saying about, the future of healthcare is basically some medical institution will put their prices up on a menu board, and you pick what you need done or you want done or whatever, and you have a price up front that you pay, and going in you're going to pay that, and if it's anything more than that, then the institution eats the cost. You don't pay any more than what's posted on that board. And that would be a way. Now, he didn't put it this way, but, in my mind, what he's saying is this would be a way of bypassing the insurance companies. And
that's the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, it would get the insurance companies.
Okay, you've got an appendix bursting. Are you going to call for prices? He treats everything in healthcare as if it is elective.
Yeah, obviously, in a situation like that, you couldn't operate that way. You're going to have to go with whatever. I mean, at that point, you're dealing. But there are certain things like procedures
ahead of time. That's all part of the economics of the healthcare system. You can't split out what is elective and then apply it to the whole, and then leave a core healthcare system that can take care of people and that is financed. You can't split it out like that.
Yeah,
which is exactly what they've done, which is what has destroyed our healthcare system.
In the case of Steve Forbes, too, he doesn't need health insurance because he can pay for his procedures as the need arises.
Right.
So he's really speaking in terms. He's speaking like a billionaire, like the billionaire that he is.
Yeah.
So anyway,
with no clue at all and no care. No, I consider him to be a psychopath because he has no care in the world about what his ideas do to the rest of us out here.
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't think a lot of these people, that are rich and have been rich for so long. I honestly think they lack the capacity to understand. It's not even so much. I think they think they're being compassionate, and maybe their intentions are such. But the problem is that they've been so far removed from ordinary general people. They're so far above in their ivory tower that they have no idea how life is for ordinary people.
That's exactly what I said to Foster Gamble. When he did that Thrive movie, and I posted something about it. I wrote something about it on Rosa Corey's website, and he actually came on that website and conversed with me about that. And I told him, I said, look, you're richy rich, and you're trying to sell us this vision of utopia as if utopia is possible. Well, Richie Rich has lived in utopia his whole life. He believes in utopia. Mm-hmm. We, in the regular world out here, we live in the real world where nobody gives you anything for free. There's no such thing as utopia. You have to
get out there and earn it.
And you're trying to tell me we can have free energy, we can have free this and that. All we have to do is cooperate and sign up for the technocratic tyranny. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, the only free lunch is in mousetraps. There you go.
That's very good.
It's not original. I would love to be able to take credit for it. It's not original. Anyway, let's go to the phones, and we have a call on the line from Washington State. Hello, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, you have...
Good afternoon.
Yeah. You're having some difficulty with your internet, and...
You noticed.
When you are talking when you are talking with the technician that's going to come out, you might want to run a scenario by him.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing a recent mainstream media newspaper article. The story's basically, I thought I'd work from home. I got a Wi-Fi router. Everything's great. But then I started getting slower speeds, and it just wasn't working. I called the technician. The technician comes over. I offered him a beer. He said, no, I don't think I should, but he grabbed the beer. And here's the story the technician says. Let me go out to my truck and get you this booster box. Well, this is crazy, the client says. You have this company, I'm going to get another company. And the technician says, no, it's not going to matter. They're all the same way. It's a marketing tool. First, we get you in, and then the service diminishes, and, what do I owe you for this little gadget? Oh, no, thanks for the beer. Okay, that's mainstream media story. Who knows whether any of that's accurate. What I'm trying to get across to you, and what I think you should talk to this technician, is the service diminishing is probably a marketing strategy to welcome the 5G.
Well, that could very well be.
Good thought.
I don't know. I don't know if they're even offering that out here at this point in time. Yeah, the thought did occur to me that 5G once it gets out here, supposedly that's going to fix everything. You know.
Right, it's going to fry their customers. So.
Yeah, I don't know.
And we were.
Yeah, go ahead.
We try and make some headway encouraging charcoal making. Well, here is this huge worldwide organization, and they're presenting at a discussion on it. It's a representative, is the lead speaker, and he's talking about charcoal making, but what does he have to throw in? And we need rural broadband. So how is this a solution? But his opinions are that we need the efficiency of farming. We need tractors that are owned by Bill Gates, is the biggest investor in John Deere. We're on our way out. They are going to have tractors and farming done without humans.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want us, they don't need us.
Yeah, because they can be controlled. If you've got a field that needs to be plowed or something, you can have a tractor that goes along. I didn't know Bill Gates was investing in John Deere, but that would explain a lot, because John Deere has incorporated a lot of proprietary code and stuff in their tractors for farms, and they don't even allow people. I mean, you can't work on them anymore, is my understanding. In fact, if you try to get inside, you could actually be sued for violating their patents and stuff, their copyright material.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
There were some farmers that were suing about that, though, because a farmer's tractor broke right in the middle of harvest, and he needed it fixed now, but it was going to be like 3 days before a computer technician could be flown out to his field to fix his tractor.
Yeah, this is insane. But this is the future, and all this, they can literally plow fields and keep track of where the tractors are and everything by Wi-Fi technology, or 5G in this case. It's a weird, brave new world that I don't think any of us really want to go into, but we're being dragged kicking and screaming into it. Anyway.
That's the idea of the global economy, and how everything is going to be free, because it will all be technology driven, except that you have all of these regular people out here. How are you going to feed them in a world where you have all the labor being done by computer systems that cost a lot of money, and not everybody can work on the computer systems, So
yeah, I got a hard break coming up here. You got anything else, caller?
I'd love to stick.
Okay, hang on just a moment. We'll be back in a moment, folks. This is Govern America.
Before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order. New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, greatest restructuring of the global economy, greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
The councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
Live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is the third and final hour of this train wreck we call Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It continues to be the 25th of January 2020 as we move rapidly through this final hour. And hopefully no more problems. We'll see. We'll see. This is the excitement of it all. It's kind of like this show, Vicky, is kind of like Forrest Gump's box of chocolates.
You never know what you're going to get.
That's right. Exactly.
I love live radio, and
it's adventuresome nature, huh?
Yeah, because you never really know what's going to happen.
That's right. It's like a movie that you get a new ending every time. Anyway, we got a caller on the line from Washington State. Go ahead, caller. What were you going to say?
Well, I want to encourage you both that you look at this situation and you're seeing it needs some resistance. So you must get kind of down in the dumps occasionally. This takes a lot out of your day and week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know people that are big, they love their technology, but when they think about being out in the middle of the woods in a pickup truck that breaks down that they can't fix, they go out and search for these trucks with low miles that don't have all this, that are not rust buckets, and they're paying pretty top dollar for grandpas sitting in the garage.
Yeah.
30, 40-year-old trucks.
And the problem is, how long can you do that before those old trucks aren't going to be available, for one thing, and for another thing, they want to shut down gas stations. Now it's going to be many, many years before they get that completely offline, but they're trying to transition to this strictly electric vehicle thing, which I think is absolutely asinine. But that's where we're headed. If you listen to what some of these manufacturers are saying, I mean, they're completely they're doing away with full lines of cars that are that burn any kind of fuel, and it's strictly electric.
Well, and
we're not even talking about hybrids.
Is that the price of everything, when it's computerized, technology driven, is that it doubles and trebles and quadruples the cost of whatever it is, which is what that's going to do. It's going to make everything be a lease deal because you can't afford to buy it.
Yeah.
And so, you have to lease a car for your whole entire life, or you have to lease your washing machine and your dryer and your refrigerator, anything electrical. You'll have to lease it because they're computerizing it.
Or you call your rental, and it comes to you like a pizza would, and you get in your rental, and it drives you wherever you want it to go, hopefully.
Well, and
hopefully not over a cliff.
If you live in Manhattan, that is a perfectly viable solution. Because I lived in Manhattan, and I didn't need a car, and a car was too expensive. But when we wanted to go someplace, we rented a car. But we made there.
Yeah,
and it costs a lot of money to live there. And you can't do that out here in the West. It's not viable.
No, that's quite an expansive space out there, I've noticed. And hey, thanks for the call. I appreciate the call there. Is it Brian?
It is. Could I just mention one more thing?
Yeah, real quickly.
I'm hoping for you to reconsider having my biochar experts on. You said you listened to the Forest Service lady. She was talking CO2. In my opinion, this is the dialectic. If we don't embrace, well, you can have your opinions. That doesn't mean that I can't talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
This fire hazard thing, all of these dead trees, I'm trying to encourage people to be proactive. And I think your show, if you had a little window, these two people, both the guy who has a biochar facility up in British Columbia, he would love to come on your show along with this Forest Service lady that I just talked to her 2 days ago. She said, well, yeah, Darren says that I pursue the CO2 human-caused.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not my big thing, is sequestering carbon at all. I want to promote biochar. So that's my quick,
okay,
which you might reconsider.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe we can carve
do
out
have a comment about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't really
Appreciate
want
the
to
call.
encourage anything that uses burned materials. And the reason why is because of these major fires that we're having where they're burning up all the trees. And I'm positive that those fires are arson. And so any conversion to any kind of system that depends on burned materials, I'm really leery of it because of how many psychos there are. They look at a forest and say, there's biochar, potential biochar. All we have to do is burn it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for the call. I appreciate your thoughts and your, I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing with it, but it just, and part of the problem too is that we do certain subjects. There's certain things that we know really well, I think, and I don't know. It's just I don't know how you can be necessarily all things to all people. There are certain things it's just like certain people are good at survival things, and we've done shows on survival topics, but that's not my area of expertise. I read up on it. I do what I can, but there are certain people that are better qualified. I don't know. Maybe we'll look at it again. I don't know. Anyway, but we were talking about 5G earlier, and there was a Senate hearing. I got information. There's Ron Johnson, who was Senator Ron Johnson. The audio from him on this 5G technology and workforce training.
Workforce development.
Yeah, workforce development. We were talking earlier about privatization and how everything is being run by the big corporations. And the caller pointed out the John Deere thing, Microsoft investing in agricultural equipment, that sort of thing. I mean, all of that is an extension of this massive drive to push multinational corporations to basically take over everything, including our government. And I think that's what's meant by the term governance. It's a means of control.
And that's what I talk about all the time when I talk about the technocratic tyranny.
Yeah, absolutely. Senate hearing on 5G technology and workforce training, workforce development. I remember back when Charlotte Iserbyt was talking about the Soviet model being adopted here in the United States. And so anyway, this is Ron Johnson.
Obviously, in this 5G space, the federal government has to allocate broadband. We need to remove different barriers, whether it's permitting or, again, just other regulatory barriers. In terms of workforce development, we need to fix our immigration system, our legal immigration system. 1.1 million people we grant legal permanent residency to, less than 10% have a job. It's all family reunification. We got to go more toward a Canadian or Australian system where 60% are tied to some work. And by the way, the full spectrum of job skills, from low to high skilled. But I really want to go back to workforce development because coming from the private sector, before I did this silly thing, I ran a manufacturing plant. We haven't been able to hire people for decades, primarily because we have for decades been telling all of our young people you have to get a 4-year degree. and we have made loans readily accessible. We've enticed our children to collectively incur $1.5 trillion of student loan debt, providing them degrees that employers don't value, where they're real jobs. We also have a welfare system that pays people not to work, but let's not focus on that. Let's talk about what we really need to do. I don't believe the federal government is effective at providing training programs. So I'm trying to dissuade you from looking at the federal government to hop in here for workforce development. What I'm asking the associations to do, get into the private sector. Now, Mr. Miller, get into high schools. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have to work with the technical colleges to provide the degree programs that the industry needs. We need to get to our children and encourage them and let them know that there's no first or second class way to realize their full human potential. All work has value. There are great careers in manufacturing and in construction. We need to change the attitude that we've been beating into our children's head for decades. You have to get a 4-year degree or you're some kind of second-class citizen. There are great jobs. There are great careers. And my final thought is, as I look at my kids who are in their 30s, they've got a lot of friends that didn't go on to college. Those kids have, those adults now have children. They've got debt, but it's a mortgage on a house and a boat. They're living a life. The really smart kids went on to college and graduate school. Some of them aren't even working, and they're $200,000 or $300,000 worth into debt. So I guess I'll just kind of throw that open. Again, encourage your associations. Use your power. Talk to the private sector. Get them involved in middle school, in high school, and change that attitude in terms of all the valuable occupations out there. Go work hard, go home, forget about it, go fishing.
What do you think of that?
That's where the propaganda comes in. And the idea, what they're doing is they're blaming our young people for not succeeding in an economy as the economy is being destroyed in this global transformation to a system of total automation.
Yeah, part of what I get really frustrated too is that they talk about coal miners like they can just retool. You sent me that Council on Foreign Relations video where they're talking about how these coal miners can. People are not. Some people are just not technically savvy. They're just not able to put it together technically, and a lot of times, and I'm not saying all coal miners are like this. But, a lot of these people, they've never even seen, they don't do computers. Some of them don't even do internet. They go to work every day. They know the value of hard work. They do hard work. And, to suggest these people could just, go to school and learn a trade at their age, it's asinine.
It is, and I know people that have worked on computers, used computers for years, and they're still incompetent. Mm-hmm. Because it's just not. They just don't understand the black box.
Well, some people are wired for it, some people are not. Now, of course, today's generation coming up are pretty much all technically savvy because they were raised their entire life with a lot of this stuff. But you get some of these older people who are, certainly they're not ignorant, they're not dumb, but they understand the technology of their day. And when you get to a certain age, the old saying, the old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, it depends on the dog, I guess, but the point is that a lot of these people are just, they're too old to go back to school. They're too old to relearn.
Well,
it's like starting anew.
When you're 50 years old, you can't start over as if you're 20 years old and know nothing. You have the experience of a lifetime. And, as in my case, I went back to school and, to be like a medical receptionist. Give me a break, And I'm supposed to be, well, it was just a disaster. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. I'm not good working with people. Number one, and number two, I'm certainly not capable of starting over as if I know nothing.
Right.
Bottom of the.
Well, it's just no.
Oh, I know things.
People can't.
Sorry, but I do.
Right.
And it just is not a workable solution.
Well, they want a clean slate, too. They want people that don't know anything because they want to be able to tell you what you know. And if you already
and it
know
wasn't
things,
the computer thing, because I've been working on computers my whole life. So the whole idea of retraining people, for jobs on computers, it's a big lie. That is a big lie. What the now they are trying to get the young people to train in technical careers on technical things, but they're, because of the automation and the efficiency that they're putting into the economy, there are not enough jobs for these people. And so what they've done is create a business out of training.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to slowly privatize our education system. What these billionaires have done, and policy has done, is to look at our economy, and every big pot of money, they've gone after it. And there is no bigger pot of money than our education system.
Yeah, boy, isn't that the truth?
And so all of this propaganda that there are shortages is just that. It's propaganda. It's the big lie. What there is a shortage of cheap labor. And that's why they keep bringing in foreigners to do jobs that Americans are perfectly capable of doing, but they have been using these foreign inputs of labor to drive wages down.
Yeah. Well, the military and security industry is a pretty big pot of money. I think that nothing can compete with that.
That's going to be the only job that there is in security and in the police state.
Well, there's a new Space Force, Vicky. We got this new Space Force logo. I tweeted it out yesterday.
Flash Gordon. Every time I hear that Space Force, my mind goes back to Flash Gordon and the TV program in the 1950s, where they built this model, probably out of cardboard, of a spaceship.
Yeah, Donald Trump tweeted out the new Space Force logo, which looks an awful lot like the United Federation of Planets. A lot of people pointed out that this looks like Star Trek. They even have one of the little communicators, what appears to be a Star Trek communicator, over the globe. And
beat me up, Scotty.
Yeah, exactly. I tweeted it out yesterday, and I said, another pointless frontier that government can use to waste trillions more of U.S. taxpayer money while destroying everything on Earth that won't go along with the plan for world government. Had Obama done this, the right would rightfully be screaming at the top of their lungs. But, Donald Trump can do it. Everybody will cheer it because it's a great thing, even though it's not really his idea, I'm sure.
Well,
I come back to the
I'm
report
sure
from
that
Iron
they
Mountain.
didn't talk about it, but I'm sure that the Russian scientists are still involved in Space Force, the same as they were, when they did that joint project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're talking about the space station?
Yeah, the space station. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because ultimately all of the internet systems.
Ultimately what? The internet systems what?
Will be airborne, satellite.
Yeah, very much like the
wireless.
Coronavirus is airborne.
And it will be a technocratic tyranny.
Yeah.
When they get all of these global systems in place, it will be a nightmare of a life because everything will be harmonized. It's a world of one. A long time ago, I wrote an essay about the world of one. Everything normalized, everything harmonized, everything the same.
Yeah.
Because that's what computer systems demand.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have uniqueness. You can't have odds in a computer system. Everything has to be treated the same.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the show before. In fact, I think we had one of our shows titled The World of One several years ago. That's the thing. We've been on the air doing this long enough that I have to actually be careful not to title the show something we've used before. That's been a little bit of a challenge at times. We got another caller on the line. And by the way, folks, if you want to call in, you're welcome to do so. It's kind of been somewhat of a discombobulated show today, so we're a little less formal today than we usually try to be. 610-600-1776 is the number. 610-600-1776, or you can call toll-free 844-646-8376. That's 844-6-GOVERN. Let's go to Texas, and you're on the air, caller. Who do we have here? Hello? Hello? Going once? Going twice? Okay, gone. I don't know exactly what happened, but apparently they weren't listening. So anyway, moving along here, we were talking about propaganda, and basically that's what a theme is often with the show, is combating propaganda. And of course, we had the Virginia gun rally take place, and boy, you would think that with everything going on, Vicky, it was going to be the apocalypse, man. I mean, we did warn people that the possibility existed of COINTELPRO operations. But the media seemed to really be, no pun intended, gunning for it. I mean, they really seem to be trying to their best to build up to a big, giant event. And here,
they probably had pre-written stories.
I'm sure they did. And here in fact, somebody even said that in one of the reports afterwards. I think it was Tucker Carlson. Let me just go ahead and jump. Let me just give you an example. This is an example of what the media was, how they treated that whole thing prior to the actual rally.
Right now, thousands of gun rights activists, white nationalists, militia groups, all swarming the Virginia state capitol.
There are a lot of people nervous about what's going to happen.
Authorities in Richmond are on high alert.
It could be a tense day.
Such polarization, what may happen in Virginia.
Several hate groups, supposedly some white nationalists.
White nationalists.
White nationalists. White nationalists.
White nationalist groups.
White supremacists.
White supremacists.
White supremacists. White extremists.
This entire rally stands in opposition to the meaning of this day.
Virginia on the edge.
How concerned are you that there might be some people in this crowd that may want to get violent?
There's certainly a lot of concern here.
Raising fears of a dangerous confrontation.
It could be violence. And there is real concern there about what the intention is behind this.
There's a lot of concern about the potential for violence.
It sparked violence. Tensions high in Virginia may cause violence there.
Northam clearly trying to avoid another Charlottesville.
Yeah. In Charlottesville, could see a repeat of what we saw in 2017 in Charlottesville.
Similar to what we saw in Charlottesville.
Worrying about a repeat of Charlottesville.
Horrible 2017 Charlottesville disaster.
You look at what happened in Charlottesville.
The two sides clashed in Charlottesville.
Men walked through the Capitol in Virginia carrying weapons of war.
Many demonstrators are, in fact, heavily armed.
Heavily armed.
Heavily armed. Look at the gear.
What is this all about?
Militia groups. Armed militia.
These militia groups.
Far-right militias.
Militia groups.
Far-right extremists. Extremists.
Okay, so this is how they treat gun people. People who own firearms. And by the way, you're a white nationalist, you're a neo-Nazi, you're a white supremacist. And yet they had a lot of blacks there, a lot of people from all stripes, all different parties. They had Democrats there who like to shoot. I mean, they had people from all walks of life came out because they support the Second Amendment. And this is how they treat it. And even CNN had to admit afterwards, during the rally, here was their report.
2017. But let's go there. What is happening there this morning? CNN's Sarah Seidner, she's standing by. She's been in the mix amongst the demonstrators all morning. Sarah, what have you been seeing and hearing today?
Look, those threats which caused the governor to call for a state of emergency have simply not emerged. The police very clear in saying that they have not had a single arrest during this rally, and we've been standing here all morning since the very beginning. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people here. I want to give you a view. We are standing right outside of the area where you go in to the Capitol there, and what you'll see are just throngs of people lining not just this street, but all the streets around the Capitol. There are folks that are there to lobby their legislators because this is actually lobby day, where they are trying to tell them how upset they are with some of the gun restrictive laws that they are looking to pass. There are several that folks are upset with and people here want their voices heard, but there are people from all over the country here, not just Virginians, to be sure. We talked, though, to someone who is from Virginia, who is here in Richmond and standing for what he says is his right to bear arms. Let's listen to what Manny Vega had to say. We talked to him a bit earlier.
We're here to represent every citizen here that wants to keep the right to bear arms. This government here in Richmond has usurped the Constitution of the United States and the Virginia Constitution that guarantees us those rights. And all of us are here protesting for the right to bear arms. All we want to do is to be able to defend ourselves.
There might be far right and far left groups that might be out here today, but the vast majority of the message is guns save lives, and we believe in the Second Amendment.
So far, there haven't been any far left groups that we've seen here. This is really a group of folks who do not want their gun rights to be limited. And so right now, completely peaceful. You're hearing some of the speakers speak. This is supposed to wrap up at about 2, but again, no incidents so far, guys.
That is good to hear. Sarah, thank you.
And they seem so disappointed.
Yeah, good to hear.
Good to hear, yeah. So
I just know they're so disappointed.
Oh, you know they are, because they were ramping up for violence. Hey, we got a great thing going here. And no.
Oh, they could have kept that going for months. The next year.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, we got the caller on the line again. Let's see if we can get anywhere with them this time. Hello, caller.
Have you got me this time?
I got you now. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Lark in Texas.
Hi there.
Hi, Lark.
Well, listen. Hi there. A few points, if you don't mind. I find it very interesting that Martin Luther King's Day follows on the same day as Robert E. Lee's birthday. Just like I also found it curious that Earth Day every year falls on Vladimir Lenin's birthday.
That's interesting.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, you know the guy that invented Earth Day, he chopped up his girlfriend. I don't know. That doesn't get talked about a lot, I notice.
I didn't know that. What was his name?
I don't remember. I'll look it up. I'll see if I can look it up. Go ahead, Lark.
I can tell you. His name is Ira Einhorn.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
Oh, is that who?
Yeah, it's Ira Einhorn. Yeah, I think he's still
know he was the Earth Day guy.
Yeah, well, that's by design. They don't want you to know that. Because,
by the way,
it wouldn't be good publicity. Go ahead.
Last name. For the listeners, his last name is spelled E-I-N, as in Nancy, H-O-R-N as in Nancy. Ira Einhorn.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I can remember being at an Earth Day event at Dallas's Fair Park a few years ago with my buddy Phil. And we asked all of these people, every single one of them, we asked at least a dozen people that were manning these booths from universities and various Earth-friendly type organizations, nonprofits, especially university groups. Not a single person knew it was Vladimir Lenin's birthday. And the first Earth Day was in 1970. But and then of course there's no clamor for removing Albert Pike's statue in Washington D.C., who was indeed a Confederate war general. Have you noticed?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's amazing, the selectivism with which they're able to try to drive these agendas.
Well, that's because
there's no discussion because people get all their news from TV and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gotten to where I can't hardly watch it anymore. It makes me sick to my stomach. I watch clips online, and I do watch, certain free services, around the world, especially if they're saying something about a foreign country. I'll go to the foreign country and try to either read or watch something they have if it's in English, it can't be, assuming that foreign languages can be translated if it's a web page, but, the live dialogue can't. But, Yeah, I mean, I've gotten to the point where the propaganda is it's just so bad. I don't know how anybody can watch it, to be honest with you.
Well,
yeah, I don't either. I think most people that are still watching it are people that have no clue.
Yeah.
About what really is going on in the world.
I mean, the way Rachel Maddow has lied to the left, how that woman has any ratings, I don't know. You know, over and over again, she says the walls are closing in. You know, I don't understand how these dedicated people think that has a basis in any kind of fact whatsoever. But
well, aside from the fact that she's a lesbian and a Rhodes Scholar, I mean.
Oh, the Rhodes Scholar. Okay, that explains why she's still on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll forgive me, okay? I cannot stand to even react to anything from the Talmud Vision at all. Mm-hmm. And that's why I don't watch TV, and I don't give much store to any information that comes across the Talmud Vision, because it's all agitprop 100%. It's owned by the same people that took over Russia and created the Bolshevik Revolution, and because they were the ones that coined the word agitprop.
Mm-hmm.
But
do you have that story that I found, Darren, where Rupert Murdoch was part of an international council?
He was a part of an international council?
Yeah. Did I send that to you?
You probably did, but it's probably in the stack of mounds of... Let's see. Well, I'll tell you what. I got... I got audio here of this. So I'll tell you what. After Lark gets done with his the points he wants to make, we can play some of that.
Okay.
So go ahead, Lark.
Okay, I only have 2 more points to make. In response to the seeming chaos and schizophrenia of which you spoke,
mm-hmm.
Vicky, that none of this global governance stuff makes no sense. I put the operative words, I think, in the chat room, which helps explain it. And you can...
well, what's the word? Because I probably won't go to the chat room, but what's the word?
Well, you have to go over to invisiblesurfscaller.com, and that's Robin Eubank's website. And then you have to do a search for these Russian and French language words to explain it all, because she's a securities attorney, and she's a historian, and her husband is a techie. He's a software developer. So she's pretty sophisticated in her research, because she follows what's going on at these conferences around the world. But the word that springs to mind of those 4 or 5 words that I pushed in your chat room is the word engrenage. Engrenage is the sequencing, the inevitability of events. And we have to remember these fusion centers today, they gather a lot of information, a lot of data. And this data is basically fed into the system by the users themselves, by the slaves themselves, and it in turn provides biofeedback to the system operators in these fusion centers, and they're able to collate all the information, sift through it, and then put it in the hands of the game theorists and the war strategists to wage war upon the American people. It's just that simple.
Yep.
You can go to a website called the American Society of Cybernetics, and you can read, first of all, what was the whole basis of these Mason conferences post-war in the 40s and the 50s? The whole thing was about control. They had to bring these various academics and eggheads from various disciplines, so-called scientific disciplines, and most of them were social scientists of some sort. And they did not have a common language with which they can communicate. So they all decided to coalesce around this idea of applied systems analysis for the express reason that nobody knew what the hell it was. They completely made it up out of whole cloth, and they had a blank slate with which to do anything they wanted with it. And that's the reality. You know,
well, that's what they called it, but systems analysis, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I found the International Institute of Applied Systems Analysis, and associated with the Club of Rome, it was Aurelio Pichi, who was one of the founders of the IIASA. But systems analysis is a process of looking at, now when I did it, I'm still doing it, but I'm just telling you within a corporation to make it simple for people to understand. What I did is to look at a functional area within a corporation. Usually they would say, you know, we want to process claims faster. We want to make this process between covered subscribers and non-covered subscribers more efficient. So we would document the process and find the places where we could make it more efficient, where we could bring in automation and make the process more accurate and faster. And that's what systems analysis is. It's not a made-up thing. It's not it's not something that doesn't exist. It does exist, but it's kind of an arcane subject area. But I do it every day. Everything what I'm doing when at government systems, and I'm looking at people, locations, things that they're doing, what their objectives are, that sort of thing. All of those are factors in an analysis of what's going on. And since what's going on in the world is the transformation to a global automated system, that's precisely what I'm doing, is systems analysis.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I understand that. Yeah, okay. It does make sense. But with all due respect, you know, I understood in my own life up until 1994, I dearly wanted to be a part of discovering an optimal diet. I was enamored with cuisine because I thought if people had enjoyed better diets in keeping with the modern era, they would enjoy better health. And I'm talking about psychological health and physiological health. And what I discovered was, at the top of my game in 1940, I realized that I was a part of one vast criminal protection racket. And I had known it for a long time. I fought the system trying to avoid it because I knew it was no good. They have systematically poisoned the food supply. And when Brian called in earlier, you know, you expressed the alarm that so many people could be producing biochar. Well, see, this is what the climate change alarmists want people to think, that why would we want to unleash all these little guys making biochar because they're actually becoming responsible stewards of the land in which they are a part. You know, because you've got to do something about this tinder of dead trees, felled limbs, and stuff like that. But why not make something useful that could provide soil remediation, which could increase the nutrient density of the foodstuffs you produce on that land?
And that would be fine as long as it is a small home business. But anything that is profitable and that they can do globally, they will do it globally, and that's how, you know, the globalization is destroying the world far more than me using a car to drive to the grocery store. Well, it's all part and parcel. It's all part and parcel, you know.
We'll have to have this discussion
But
at some point in the future.
Is, and I'll hang up, is that it's the systems thinking which is endemic to the system today. All corporations today are just gung-ho for this high-tech, this AI, and this computer science and stuff.
Because they're all making money on it.
I know, but what's happening with people like Brian is going to be forced out of the market. He will not be able to operate because they want all of this under the control of some kind of computer operator somewhere. And, it's like the computerized tractors that are not manned. Why we have these forest fires is because these federal agencies that control much of this land in the West, they do not manage these forests properly like small people, little people, real people living on the land would.
Right.
I do believe that the management of our forests and our fish and game, I think it's all been transferred to the global level. I don't believe we have Americans making decisions.
With the biosphere
it used to be
reserves.
that the Forest Service managed the forests, and they actually lived out here in the West, and they lived in the forest, and they observed conditions as they were. Nowadays, it's all done by these people in Washington, D.C. And where do they come from?
Well, they're
a lot of them are UN people. As a matter of fact, the guy who made the decision that led to the pollution of the Animas River in Colorado, that little freak was a UN person.
Yeah,
and he was a chemistry major. He had absolutely no idea about mines and the what would happen if you do something to drain all of the liquid out of a mine. And so, the Animas River got polluted because of this little freak who knew nothing about mining.
Well, there is a push now under the Trump administration. That's one of the things that Trump's U.S. Forest Service, I believe, is attempting to do, and that's relocate some of these forest people out to Colorado. So they're out. So, in other words, I think move the office out there so that they can be closer to the lands that they're supposed to be managing.
And they should be forestry people and not, people with accounting degrees.
Yeah.
Get the accountants out of areas of specialty.
Yeah. Hey, Lark, I'm going to let you go right now. This is a good conversation. We'll have to have it again. And maybe there's something we overlooked with the biochar stuff. But it just didn't sound very compelling.
I can't talk about things having to do with chemistry because I'm not a chemist. The only thing I know really is about technology.
Yeah.
And I've learned about politics. But what Lark was saying about a big corrupt machine, he's absolutely right. Ever since World War II and before that, but, I'm only going back to World War II, people took over our government and they have been trying to destroy our country ever since. And they've been doing a damn good job of it.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that they did to us was the trade policy.
Yeah. Absolutely, and we talk about it all the time.
Because the trade policy gutted our economy.
And it's not going to get any better with the USMCA. It's going to continue to go, unfortunately. I'm convinced of that, despite all the glowing reviews from both sides of the political aisle. Anyway, I wanted to get into some of this propaganda stuff we were talking about a moment ago. You discovered the International Council on the U.S. Information Agency. The U.S. Information Agency was a propaganda outlet of the federal government, and it's Rupert Murdoch was on the board, and this was before the Fox News channel came into being. So this goes back to October 1987, and it's kind of interesting that he served on this board, and then later on Fox News channel came along, So what does that say about Fox News Channel? It's an arm of the federal government. Well, I wouldn't go. It's an arm of the propaganda of the federal government.
Well, Roger Ailes was a political consultant. I mean, that should tell everybody what they need to know about Fox News, because Roger Ailes was there at the beginning, and it's for this very reason, this clip you're going to play.
Yeah, here's some opening comments from then White House Press Secretary Marlin Fitzwater.
Since 1978, Congress has designated a USIA director as the principal advisor to the President, the National Security Council, and the Secretary of State on international information, education, and cultural matters, to include assessments of the impact of actual and proposed United States foreign policy decisions on public opinion abroad. USIA's International Council was formed by Director Wick in consultation with embassy posts around the world. Council members have been briefed by senior American policymakers about current U.S. foreign policy issues covering arms control, international trade, economics, global and regional issues.
By the way, I just want to remind people, I think this would be a good time since we're talking about propaganda, how far we've come. Keep in mind that it was the National Defense Authorization Act of 2013, which repealed the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which allows for materials produced by the State Department and the Broadcasting Board of Governors to be released within the U.S. borders. Prior to the repeal of Smith-Mundt, they could not turn their propaganda inward. Now, with the repeal, they can. And so
that's something interesting that people should be aware of. I'm finding more and more things where these bad policy things are coming through the appropriations legislation, like the Fragility Act. We mentioned that briefly last week. We didn't go into it enough. We'll have to go into it more next week, maybe. But they're putting these kinds of things in the Appropriations Act because the bills in general,
they have to be passed.
They must be passed. And so it's kind of like a de facto extortion racket going on.
They're writers. They're what they call writers. They write on other bills. And they just put them in there all the time because they figure they're going to pass the bill, and so they just stick a bunch of extra stuff in there, and usually at the last minute, and nobody reads these things. So anyway,
they're too big to read. They're too.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Charles Wick was the director of the U.S. Information Agency. He discusses the reasons behind the council, how they were against so-called protectionism. They were all for free trade, globalism, and were in favor of more U.S. interventionism. And these were the people who were steering U.S. foreign propaganda at the time.
This week, USIA's new International Council has been meeting in Washington. I am delighted that Council Co-Chairman Rupert Murdoch and Edward Bennett Williams on our bipartisan International Council have joined me to talk about what the Council means for our country and for its role in the world. Last spring, as many of you know, the European media and European public opinion began to raise questions concerning U.S. leadership in world affairs. In the words of The Economist magazine, March 13, 1987 issue, there was a, quote, curious European tendency to thank Gorbachev for what Reagan wrought. In light of this situation, I assembled the USIA International Council through the gracious cooperation of our co-chairman and so many others, which has made up this International Council of distinguished leaders from here and abroad, to examine overseas perceptions of our leadership in world affairs and to offer suggestions about how we can improve our public communications abroad. Members of the Council have been both supportive and critical of U.S. leadership in their deliberations. They have expressed confidence in the ability of the United States to deal effectively with world problems. But they have also expressed their reservations about certain U.S. policies. For example, some members of the Council are troubled by the growth of protectionist sentiment in the United States. They have praised the administration's commitment to free trade and have urged us to continue speaking out in favor of free trade. They applaud the emergence of decade of stronger America and a more self-confident America. Many council members also have expressed the view that U.S. aid to freedom fighters in Afghanistan has been a positive factor influencing people's opinion of the United States. We also found substantial support for the role of the United States Navy and the navies of our friends in preserving free navigation in the Persian Gulf. In short, there is impressive support abroad for the United States leadership in world affairs, but clearly we must do more.
Everything the council wanted regarding foreign policy, and it appears to me the council achieved.
Yeah, well, and the whole free trade agenda, it destroyed our economy. That's what they wanted.
Yeah, that's what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, they got pushed back from our, and as we play these clips, folks, again, remember, they're talking about how we're going to be communicating to other people abroad. And again, I remind you again, today it's not just abroad. Everything's being done domestically as well, because they're propagandizing openly. And people think that we have all these news networks like Fox News Channel that are supposedly balancing things out, right? That's certainly not the case. But they got pushed back from a reporter on the issue of propagandizing and propaganda of the U.S. Information Agency.
As the director of the United States Information Agency under the legislation, the director is the, quote, principal advisor to the President, Secretary of State, and National Security Council on foreign attitudes.
Foreign attitudes.
So we deal with a global community, and we have to get our messages abroad. It's also very important that we know how they are being received, interpreted, so that we can advise our policy people here as to what is being heard and or thought at the other end for their consideration. They may want to consider modifying the policies, putting more emphasis on certain ones that are misinterpreted, and it's been a very important meeting. We've had people from about 34 countries in many fields. Yes.
Director, are you then going to suggest that there be some kind of campaign to get your version of the policies across? Is this a propaganda?
No, it's not propaganda in its own sense.
No, of course not.
We have a job to do in explaining what the United States positions are.
It's not propaganda if we do it, I mean, that's basically what he's saying here.
Well, and what really strikes me is that they were getting public opinion from people over in Europe about American policy.
Yeah.
So where is that? Where is European public opinion coming from? It's coming from their newspapers, and plus the Helsinki Commission is over in Europe. That's the organization that is the West and East dialogue and policy center.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, why they shouldn't have been looking at public opinion anyway for American policy. They should be looking to do what's right.
But that's not ever what they do.
I think that's why our whole news media is filled with all this human rights crap. Everything is about human rights. Everybody has human rights except the vast majority of the working population.
Yeah. But, you have the right...
That's cultural Marxism they're using on us.
You have the right to listen to your ministry of truth.
We aren't seeking to... We're seeking to influence everybody in the world with only with credibility and truth and the facts. We have the Fulbright Scholarship Program, the Hubert Humphrey, Dwight Eisenhower Exchange programs, interacting with people on a one-to-one basis. We send performing artists overseas... various other kinds of groups. We publish 10 magazines in 18 languages. We bring over about 12 or 1,300 international visitors a year. We facilitate the visits of 3,000 or 4,000 additional visitors, all to see America. And getting back to your point, Sam, as far as propaganda, how can we propagandize leading journalists in major countries in their ability to ask George Shultz the same kinds of questions you do, or ask Casper Weinberger. How can we propagandize them? It's very important that we have credibility. We still find no evidence of anybody trying to climb the Berlin Wall going the other way. So, with warts and all, is a way we project America.
Sure. It's not possible for us to propagandize, Vicky. We're America.
Yeah, right.
We don't do that here. Now, here's Rupert Murdoch. He took the podium along with Charles Wick and Marlon Fitzwater, and there was a back and forth between them and the press, and it was kind of an interesting deliberation.
My backup question, sir, is to what Sam said, is if we were to play in a level playing field and are concerned about, for example, how the United States has proceeded in Europe and, for example, the President's leadership on arms control versus that of Gorbachev, how are we to do that on a level playing field unless we counter their propagandizing with propagandizing through your instrumentalities?
I would disagree with Mr. Wick, but I think, of course, the USIA's job is indeed to sell the American position and the American way of life.
I mean, is that not a part of the problem?
And it was our job in the last couple of days, and a lot of other people, to just tell Mr. Wick and his associates what we saw were the perceptions of the United States and United States policy and actions throughout the world.
So did you arrive at any...
Excuse me, Rupert, we, in not selling America's policies, these people take it in a pejorative, propagandistic sense. We inform...
Who said that?
Yeah, who did?
How do you make that assumption, Charlie?
No, Sam. We try and project America, warts and all, is what I said. And the more that we can clarify distinct positions, then this is the credibility that we achieve.
When you're an old Washington hand, sir, are we presenting...
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there because we're just about out of time. But it is a very interesting hearing, to say the least.
Yeah, it is. And they chose Rupert Murdoch to present the American story.
Yeah.
I mean...
Well, and he's still presenting it today, isn't he?
Yeah, right.
Well, and
I don't know. I don't watch mainstream TV.
Well,
so
I don't watch it much. The only person I like on that network, I think, is Tucker Carlson, and I'm always amazed that he's still there because he's one that calls into question the war machine, and he calls into question a lot of the things. I think they still have him on there to make the whole outfit look somewhat legitimate, to be honest with you, because by and large it's a big cheerleader for war and the military-industrial complex. And so that's kind of the problem there. But anyway...
Well, you need that military to impose the global technocratic utopia.
Yeah, we'll just bomb them if they don't go along. That's the way...
That's right.
That's the way it goes. Well, folks, we got to go. We're out of time. Sorry for all the crazy stuff today. I can't promise you that we won't have more of it next week. We'll see. We'll try to get it fixed, but we'll see. In the meantime, though, pray for this republic. Do what you can to restore it. Thanks, Vicky, for all you do. And
Thank you.
Join us back here next week. God bless you, folks. And we'll talk to you then.
truth for the restoration of our nation. Govern America.
Please clap.